Hey, welcome to another update on Archmage Rises. I'm going to do something different this week. Rather than talk about the game, I'm going to show you how we make it. Yeah, we've been working on these 3D dungeons for a really long time, and I'm going to show you how we can make a specific room type for the dungeon generator, and I'm going to show you how we procedurally generate and decorate the dungeon rooms. So hope this works out. I don't know if it's going to go perfectly. It probably won't, but hey, nobody's paying me to rehearse. So here we go. You can see here that I am using Unity. I'm using Unity 5.6, and that's because it's the best version of Unity, and everybody should revert back to it. Okay, actually, it's because I started working on the game during the Unity 4 days 6 years ago, and I paid $1,500 in order to upgrade to Unity 5, and I'm kind of bitter about them making it free, so I just keep using the 5.6 version. Actually, the real reason is because it would be a lot of work in order to update to the latest 2019 version of Unity. So we are probably going to do that, but for the most part, it's just a ton of work that we don't need to do right now while we're working on the rest of the game. So your version of Unity will probably be different, much different than what you're seeing here. I have the cool dark theme, and I don't have to pay any more for it. I already paid my $1,500 for the dark theme, so there you go. Okay, so how the heck do we make these 3D dungeons? The answer is we make them through code with assets in Unity. So I can take a look at all the assets in Unity here. I got a folder. This is my layout. You may hate my layout to Unity. I don't really care, because I don't use Unity a whole heck of a lot. But here is this library folder in our resources folder, and this contains everything that can possibly show up in a dungeon room. And so we try to categorize them. We have beds and carpets, ceilings, columns, whatever. And then we have this props thing, and inside props we have a whole bunch of things like food and dishes and beets and breads, cheese and whatever. Anyways, it goes on and on and on. We have a whole bunch of crap in this folder. So all this stuff needs to get into the game in some way so that the AI that decorates the room can figure out where to put these things. So how do we do that? The answer is we do it through code. Oh, I don't think I mentioned. So the kind of room that we're trying to make, you're actually looking at the result right now. We're trying to make a kitchen. So I'm going to start from the very, very beginning where we just have an empty box, and we get up to creating the kitchen scene. Okay, so I'm going to flip over to Visual Studio, and I'm going to show you this once, and then I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We have the idea that dungeons are built by different races. I have said a long time ago that there would be other races like dwarves and elves and stuff in Archmage Rises, and that would be DLC because it's way too much work in order to add another race to the game with all the systems that we have right now. And so here's one example of that. So we have dungeon race human, and we have all the things that the humans would do when they built a dungeon. So here we have a whole bunch of folder structure that we set up, whatever. And so here we go, dungeon race human, and we say, okay, the humans, and we have stuff. And we've created a system. The idea is it's kind of like a library. If you've played The Sims, there's like this whole kind of shop architecture side of the game where they have all kinds of cabinets and furniture and stuff, and you as a player, you like pick through all those things and you find one that you like and you pay the money for it and you plop it into your house. That's essentially what needs to happen with our AI. So first we have to load up the AI with a library of stuff to say here's all the possible things you can put in. And so the way we do that is here's the barrel. Every game has to have a barrel. If you don't have a barrel, you don't have a good game. Okay, so here's the barrel, and we say, hey, we're going to add this thing to the library of barrels, and What is the file? This thing is the file name, so we know where it is in the folder structures, the library props. And then this is the prefab that is in Unity, and we say this thing is a prop as opposed to being a door or a wall or something like that. And then we can put here any number of additional tags. And so our library system works off of tagging, and I can throw in some extra additional keys that show up in the library. So a barrel is a barrel, that's the noun that it is, but it's also part of this concept of storage. And so you'll see concept of storage, we have a whole bunch of things. We got barrels, we got sacks, we got chests. Down here we got jars that are all part of storage. We have a bucket that's storage. We have wash basin that is washing. Chairs that are seating. So we got a whole bunch of generic things that we throw into the library. So then when we go to design a room, we don't have to specify, I want this jar, and I want that jar, and I want this other kind of jar. We just say, hey, this room has storage, and then all of a sudden all the storage stuff is open for the AI to pick it. So now I'm going to go down to the specific stuff. So we have a bunch of things. We just decided to start making separate methods here for loading in the stuff kind of by concept. So we have a list of kitchen-y things, and one of the things that's kitchen-y is we have a shelf that has cooking stuff on it, so it's under the concept of cooking. We have different kinds of fireplaces, like the big cooking hearths, actually. They're not really fireplaces, but whatever. We have tables that would only show up in a kitchen that would not show up, for instance, in a barracks or a dining room for some reason. Pots, cauldrons, pans, and they all show up over here, cooking, cooking, cooking. We have a whole bunch of crates. We got wine crates, food crates, bread crates. Or no, not bread crates. Bread is food. But this thing, the sweet pepper crate is under crate. And we got a whole bunch of food things and stuff. So it really doesn't matter how we did all this. It's just, this is what we did. We made these things. And so now we have a library of stuff. So how do we get that stuff into the dungeon room? Okay, so we created this class called kitchen, which is a dungeon room, and we define a few things on it. We give it a name. Okay, it's a dungeon room named kitchen. That's great. And then we have a size, and we define how big or how small a room can be based on the kind of usage that it would have. So for instance, if you're making a throne room, it's not going to be tiny. If you're making a jail cell, it is going to be tiny. So we need to tell the AI, hey, these are the kind of parameters to use. So if I go into Unity and run our super awesome Archmage dungeon generator thing, we will see a tiny room. Ignore this room. Compiling, regenerate, and I should get a big empty room. There, that is the most basic room. This is how every room begins, and this is how we're going to begin this journey of making the kitchen. Okay, so we got this big fat square, and the lighting is cool, but other than that, it's super boring. So how do we add some pizzazz to this thing? The first thing is, Michael, Daniel, and I, we're all programmers. We don't really know how it's supposed to look. So that's when we bring in the amazing Emily, and she created for us examples. She went through all of our assets and decorated up the rooms, and I really pumped up the brightness on this particular picture just because it makes working a whole lot easier just to see everything rather than having mood lighting. So in here, Emily made up this room with all of the assets, and we use that as a template. And we're like, okay, that's what we're going to try and make. Now, I have to be honest with you. It's not going to look exactly like this. It's not going to look this good. It's going to get close, but it's not going to look this good. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we don't have the ability to hang things from the ceiling. That is a piece of tech that we just have not got around to building yet, and frankly, we're tired of building tech. Another thing is this awesome wood ceiling. This actually adds a lot to the room, but we don't have it, so too bad, Emily. No wood ceiling in this video. But most of the other things I've been able to get in, and they may not be placed as well as a person who puts them in, but they can be placed close enough to how a person would do it that at least makes the room interesting. And for our purposes of how Archmage plays, the player can't walk around inside this room. They just look at it from here and they can search things. And so for our purposes, it works fine. Okay. So how do we get from this awesome picture, how do we get from this big, empty, boring square to this? Well, it takes time to figure out and say, what the heck did Emily do here? We actually spend a lot of our days saying, what the heck did Emily do here? So we sit down and we think, okay, what did Emily do? And then we start writing down all the stuff that seems important in this room. I mean, obviously we can open it up in Unity and we can look at what asset files and stuff she used, but it's more conceptual. Like, oh, we got hanging shelves. Okay, so that seems kind of important. We got a cupboard in here. The cupboard has like cooking stuff on it. That seems important. We got a table in the center. It has cooking elements, a pot, some ingredients or something on there. We have obviously a big hearth fireplace for cooking. We have storage of some kind. And buckets and stuff. So just trying to like, okay, there's these kind of 5 or 6 elements that make this room feel like a kitchen. So that's what we start with. And so I think the biggest and most important thing is getting a fireplace in there. So let's get a fireplace in. So flipping back to Visual Studio. Okay, we're going to throw in a fireplace. So how can, actually, before I put in a fireplace, let's go back to the picture. Okay. There's these wooden columns, so it doesn't really matter what order we work in, but I like to work from kind of the biggest structural things down to the small things. I think that makes sense. So we got these wooden columns and beams in here. So we don't actually have the tech to put in these wooden columns. We do have columns in other rooms, but I don't know. Michael said there's something different about these ones versus those ones, so we don't have it right now. But what we can do is these wooden beams at the top of the roof. So let's go in and add wooden beams at the top. So how do we add in wooden beams? Rather than have you watch me type, I can actually type pretty fast, but there's no point in watching me type errors and stuff. So just going to paste in code as we go. So we have a thing already predefined on our dungeon room is horizontal beams, and we say, hey, we want we have a utility function that has all kinds of awesome stuff to make the game, and we have a random range between 2 and 5 inclusive. Super important to know that. So we say we want between 2 and 5 beams because that makes sense, and zero-based randomization does not make sense. You heard it here first. Okay, so we want between 2 and 5 beams. So what we do is we save that, and then I flip over to Unity, and just click away. Click away. Okay, so here's our box, and we wait for Unity in order to finish compiling. And come on, Unity, you can do it. There. Okay, so now we go over here, and we can generate a room. I choose the type. These are the list of all the room types. They are not all finished. I'm showing you right now in this video how long it takes to do one type. And that's after you've already figured everything out. And the race is human as opposed to other races, but right now we just have decorations for human. And here we're defining what the, we call it a card size because every dungeon room is a card in the dungeon deck. And so we define how big it is. So I'm defining the width as being 8. I can make it between 7 and 9. So in this generator, I can define it right here. I can override what is in the code. So in the code, I have 8 to 10, 4 to 6, 12 to 15. So let's try those sizes. I don't know why it's so slow. This thing is behaving the worst possible way. It's like total crap. Okay. I have no idea why this is so bad. Amazing. Okay. Well, this is what you get with no rehearsals. What was that number again? 8 to 10. Okay, come on. So crappy. This is going to be a long video. I can't even remember the numbers. This takes so long to type them in. Okay. Okay, 12 to 15. Holy cow. Okay, so that was ridiculous. Okay, now we can click generate. Okay, so we got a room here that is between these numbers defined here. Look, we got wooden beams. Hey, something good happened. That's right. Okay, this is game view from the camera that is defined, but I use scene view all the time. And as I told you, light really helps. We don't need mood lighting while we're working, so I just turn on this extra ambient light so we can really see things. Okay, so this is the room. Okay, so we got wooden beams. We got between 3 and 5 of them. So that's how you get wooden beams in. Great. Okay, let's add something important. So we are going to add in a fireplace. So notice that I'm not defining things by prefab. I'm telling it specific concepts that I want in my room. So the concept is a fireplace, and I want a large one. So these are 2 different tags. This function add major means these are important things that have to be in the room. So if for some reason it can't find, because of the location of the doors, it can't find a way to get the fireplace in, it causes a room regeneration. So that's what majors are. And then we just say, hey, it's a new decorator. What kind of decorator? Well, fireplace, large. And then we have a number of parameters here that we can define. So if we're just being really, really basic, take all that out, we could say, hey, I want this thing, and there's a 100% chance for it to show up. Then it will show up. We have other ways that we can define it, and that is we can put in excluded tags. So include fireplaces that are large, but exclude magical ones or something like that. And so we needed this because we were getting too many hits on things like crates or something. And it's like, no, I want crates, but I don't want crates of coal in my kitchen, for instance. And so this was an easy way for us to define that. So I'm not excluding anything. Then I put in the % chance that it's going to show up. And then I have this final thing, which is a must value. And so the must value, there's a 100% chance that fireplaces are going to be added into the room, but there must be at least one and only one. Okay, so I could have a 100% chance of there being between 1 and 3 or 2 and 5 or something like that. But in this case, I want one fireplace. So I put in 100% chance of one fireplace. There must be one fireplace. And then there's one little thing that we do in order to ensure, to tell the AI whether or not the room is good. And we say, because it's a kitchen specifically, you have to regenerate if there's no fireplace. Because so many things could happen while we're trying to decorate the room. It's possible to end up with a bedroom that doesn't have a bed or a kitchen that doesn't have a fireplace. So this is an extra check to say, like, you have to enforce this rule that there has to be a fireplace. You might be wondering, like, hey, but you told it there must be one. How could that work? I don't know. That's the short answer. I don't know. We just have to put in this extra rule. Ask Michael. That's what I say. Okay. So now I save this, flip back to super slow Unity, wait for some compiling. Go to our generator tab. I don't know why Unity is like so slow. Okay, this is not what it's like to normally work on it. Okay, back here, and we click generate. Look at that, we got a fireplace. Okay, there it is. That is not a cooking fireplace, but yeah, that's not a cooking fireplace. What kind of junk is this? Okay, did I define it correctly? Yes. Large fireplace. And let's generate it again. Although, we did get a fireplace. Oh, there's that another crappy fireplace. There we go. There's a cooking fireplace. I have no idea why I was getting those other crappy ones. But that's what you get when you teach an AI to decorate your rooms for you, instead of just having Emily do it. Okay, anyway, so there's our fireplace, and if I go into game mode and I run it, I'm not going to do this a second time. If I go and run it, then you get like the particle effects and the lighting and stuff, and it's like all neat. Okay, so there we are. You know, the fire is, you know, going in the fireplace and torches are lit. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we got a fireplace. It's still not very kitcheny, and for some reason we don't have any wood beams. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe there's a chance that the wood beams don't show up always. Okay, so we got ourselves a large wood fireplace. So the next thing in looking at our thing is there's a table. So let's get a table in here. So we go to the code. Okay, and let's put in, we want a kitchen table. Maybe it's because I have a space there that was getting so bad. Okay, so I have a kitchen table. So what I'm defining here is a 100% chance that I have a table. Must is 0 because I want between 1 and 2 of them. So this is a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2. So it is going to randomly decide how many per room. It's going to see what fits. Is actually, so it's going to always try and get 2 in there, but it may not actually happen. So save that. Go back to, oops, no. Go to Unity. Probably thinking, if Thomas knew his shortcuts better, this game would already be done. And you'd probably be right. Okay, so it should have finished compiling. I think because I'm video recording, I only have half my CPU available. So it's going real slow. Okay, let's generate. Hey, we got wood beams again. And we got 2 tables. Look at that. And these tables are right next to each other. There's actually a collision, and that's not supposed to happen, but when you look at it from the view over here, can you really tell? I don't think so. So we don't really care about those kinds of things. If you could walk around in the 3D space inside the room, then suddenly those things become really important, and we got to write some better UI. But for the time being, that's how it's going to be. So I can click generate again. We can see a different layout. So there, look. It put the table close to the fireplace. That's nice. What a handy room designer. That's pretty great. Okay, so there's absolutely nothing on the table. So how do we get things on the table? Well, let me show you how we do that. So here is a kitchen table over off on the side, and we got a whole bunch of things defined on here. So I'm gonna close this thing up. Okay, so we got ourselves a table. And I can turn off the lighting for a second. So, so we have ourselves a table, and then we define what we call anchor points on the table. So how do we know where the chairs or benches or I don't know, like plates and food and stuff, like where do those things go? The answer is that we define them on the item. So we have this thing called anchor region definition on our object, and we have 4 things that we define on there. So we are going, the first thing that we defined is the bench. So we name the region bench, and then we say what the allowable tags are, and the tags are benches. Of course, makes sense, you put benches with benches. So it's an area that benches can be placed. So whenever it looks and it sees these empty child objects, this is an anchor for a bench, this is an anchor for a bench on the other side. So that's how we know where a bench can go. And we know from our assets of benches, like how much room there needed to be in order to put it there. And we do little things to it in order to define it, like what kind of rotation maybe, or I don't know if there's sizing or something. So that's where we define what the benches are. And then we have prohibited tags. We can tell it, hey, put benches here, put chairs here, but don't put fancy chairs. That sort of thing. So down here is custom density. So density is, we have a generic randomization as to how decorated an object is, but you can say, hey, because it's a table, I want a really high chance of there being chairs around it. Whereas if it's a fireplace, maybe there's a low chance of there being chairs around a fireplace. Because of the kind of room, like if it's a banquet hall, there's like a really high chance that there's plates and silverware on top of the tables. If you're just in a generic room, like a storage room or something, maybe there's a low chance of putting things on there. So that's what that's for. And then we can define minimum and maximum rotations on all three axes in order to place it on there. We can also define the minimum and maximum position of that anchor, so it can be a little bit closer than this, a little further out than that. So we define the benches, then we define the chairs. So here's the position for one chair, then the next chair, then the chair on the other side. And then on top, we have these spaces called mugs, and I'll come back to this. We just call it mug because the very first table we designed was called mug, and we created an anchor there. We can create as many anchors as we want, and we can define like big ones for big things like crates and small ones for small things like a plate or a goblet or wine bottle. So we just have a lot of flexibility with how we can do this. So we defined all that. Somebody's already gone through and defined all that for us. But if we look back at our, if we fly through this wall, we look and see there's nothing actually there. So why is there nothing there? So we defined all of these allowable tags. So benches allow benches, but mug we have two things that we allow. We allowed food and we allowed pans. So why aren't there any foods and pans there? The answer is because I haven't said that in this room there are decorative items that are food items and pan items. So that's what we need to do next. And so I'm just going to throw in a whole bunch of things just to save some time. Okay, so we have our major items there, and then we have what we call fillables. That's what I call them. So these are items that fill in the anchor positions on other items. So this doesn't mean that a bucket is going to appear on the ground. What it means is the bucket can appear on a table or shelf or a cabinet or something like that. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of things defined here: chair, bench, pan, food, cooking. Got a bunch of stuff defined there. So once I save this and go over to Unity, hold on, we're compiling. Takes at least 3 times longer, I guess, because I'm recording a video. Oh, Unity, why are you so slow? It's like my Unity has special needs. Okay, generate. Okay, now I have some really terrible looking chairs. Who did that? That's terrible. And I ended up with some buckets on the ground. Okay, but the most important thing is on the table, it put in this bench. I think these chairs have the wrong rotation on them, and so it thinks that it's putting them in correctly, but clearly they are not correct. So we have to better define our assets. Anyway, so now we have stuff appearing around and in the table, and you see our fireplace suddenly started getting some cooking stuff on it. Okay, there we go. Turn the lights back on. So that's all because I defined the fillables of the cooking, hanging pot, that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's how we fill things in. Okay, so let's keep going with this room, and now I'm going to add in some storage scatter items to make it a little more kitchen-y. So we have miners. Miners are things that do not need to be there. They can be there if they want to be there, if they can fit. If they don't, oh well. So these are just decorative items that appear around the area. And I'm going to add in one more major item, which is a shelf. We're going to add some shelves to the walls. So I've added in a bunch of miners, like whether there's a straw rug or not. I'm not sure why you would put a straw rug in a room that has a big open flame, but maybe they didn't know that in medieval times. I don't know. We have windows. You'll notice that we don't do anything special for things that hang on the wall versus things that go inside of a fireplace versus things that go in the ground. That's one nice thing about it. So we can just put it on there and we can define on the item itself. If I go over to Dungeon Race Human, I can say, for instance, we have found that barrels in the middle of the room look stupid. So we put this thing, we could say, hey, you're a barrel, so you have to go against a wall, because nobody in their right mind throws barrels in the middle of a room. Unless, of course, it's a storage room. But they look really dumb when they... And same thing with cupboards. Nobody puts a cupboard in the middle of the room. It just doesn't make any sense. So we can define extra things. You'll see here on the kitchen table, the allowed rotation angles. You can't just rotate it 23 degrees on the Y. It has to be like 90-degree angles. So 90, 180, 270. So it lines up. It looks a lot better when we started putting in these little rules. So we can define things as being against a wall. And somewhere in here, we can say that a window... I wonder where the window is. There's a window. We freeze the Z rotation, and it is a wall object of type wall prop. So that's how it knows, oh, this thing hangs on the wall, just like these paintings hang on the wall. So that's how we define it. So it's only defined once, and then it knows how to place it in any room that we would want it. Okay, so let's go back, we'll save this, and we'll see what it looks like in Unity. I probably should say something interesting here right now, but I don't have anything. Okay, here we go, generate. Let's see what we get. Sometimes it takes a little while the first time, because it broke. And we're back to an empty room. Yeehaw. There. Okay, so we don't have any tables, which is most unfortunate. And we have a barrel in the middle of the room, which I said would never happen. This is the worst demo ever. Okay. And we got a whole bunch of shelves here. So something is breaking. I don't know if there's any ears. No. Okay, well, that's when we can bring up the debugging stuff. And I'm not sure why Michael likes having so many different debug files, but we have multiple debug files. So here we output how many attempts it took for us to get something onto the wall. And then the extents is like we were able to find the item in the library and figure out how big it is in order to figure out the sizing when we put it in the room. And then the full thing is couldn't place window stone, can't place on top of the shelves. Oh, yeah, because the shelves were already there, so you can't put a window there when you already got shelves. Couldn't place a cauldron because of the door. I don't know, this isn't really telling me a whole heck of a lot. But if I keep clicking generate, maybe I'll get something that looks pretty good. Like that. Except we still have barrels in the middle of the room. That doesn't make any sense. But we did get a window. And the windows are kind of low. There's some code updates that aren't in this particular version that Michael's already done. But there's our table. It's nice and close to the fire, so you don't get cold. And then we've decorated, put some things on there. We got some shelves with some food. That's nice. I like it when it lines up all nice like this. That's pretty cool. That's a very difficult shelf to get things off of, but whatever. So now it's looking a little more kitchen-y in here. So we're going to add a few more things. If we look back at our goal, there's some crates need to be put in, some cupboards, wine casks, sacks. So there's still a few more things we got to get in here. So let's go back here, and we're going to put in some crates and some barrels. Okay, so crates and barrels, we say those are majors. So major means that it needs to be placed down first before it starts putting in all the other stuff. And then I'm just going to put in all the rest of this minor stuff. So I already figured all this stuff out earlier and figuring out percentages, 50% chance of there being wine crates, 100% chance of any kind of crate, sacks, which are up against the wall, the cooking cupboard, and buckets. So now I save that, go back to Unity. Okay, now we generate this. Nope, still compiling. I don't know why it doesn't show the spinner in the bottom when it's still compiling. It has to give you a dialogue, whatever. Okay, now we got some more crates of food in here, and look, we got some barrels, and the barrels are against the wall and they're stacking. I still don't know why that barrel is showing up there. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know why that barrel is showing up in the middle of the room. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so now it's starting to look more kitchen-y. We got the windows that she defined. Obviously, ours are still too low. We got the shelves. We got the fireplace. We got some cauldrons hanging in there. And we have some crates of food. Now, the crates of food sitting on the ground, that's fine. I don't mind that. But it would be nice. Oh, actually, there it is. It would be nice if there was crates showing up on top of the tables, and there it actually is. I was going to show you that. I thought I hadn't defined that yet. Let's see what kitchen table has in here. So when I go here and look at how mug is defined, maybe I forgot to save my change. So if I change the size to 3 and put in crate, now food and pans and crates can show up on top of tables. But since that's already happened, it kind of steals the thunder of showing you that's how it's done. I'm still not sure why that barrel's showing up there. No crates on tables yet. At least the chairs are in the right spots. So we got a chair and a bench, and you keep your wine next to the fire for humidity. So these barrels are dynamically stacked. We actually just have one barrel. And then we do this thing called stacking, which I think is kind of neat, and I'll end this video by showing you how we do that. So if I go to, let's go to the barrel. So here is a barrel, and it stacks. Change my lighting so you can see it. Okay, so there's a barrel, and I defined it as allowing something to be to the right and something to be above it. So if I go in my inspector, I say, hey, for something to the right, there's a 90% chance that I put something to the right. And what do I add there? I add a barrel stacking, which is what this thing is. So that's what makes it recursive. So I add a barrel to the right. There's the spot for it. And so that's where it will stick a barrel. And then when that barrel goes there, then that barrel has a 90% chance of putting a barrel to the right, and so on and so on. And so there's a bug right now where it just creates barrels infinitum, which is obviously not what we want. But anyway, so we can play around with these percentages, and then we can get to what Emily has done here of, there's barrels stacked on top of each other, there's barrels next to each other, these crates are next to each other, there's a nice little stack. So that's how we get to that. So what was kind of goofy was I forgot that barrels that are on top of a barrel cannot have something to the right. So that is silly. So I see if I can generate that silliness. So here, when it says barrel stacking up, if I change that to the same barrel stacking there and apply that, So these barrels that sometimes have something to the right, sometimes have things above them, are now going to appear up vertically. And so, I don't know if this is making any sense, but I'll show you the bug in a second. So if I generate the room and we get some barrels, do we have any? Oops. Fly into the room. Do we have anything here? No, it's just those two. Okay, we'll generate again. You can really see it when there's like a wall of barrels being stacked. Okay, that looks nice. Of course, the window's too low, but that's been fixed already, just not in my version. If we make the room longer, it'll give us a better chance of actually seeing this. There's a bunch of crates going along the wall. Do I really want to change these numbers? Let's see if I can. So dumb. Okay, let's go. Well, I can't create the air. Just that good of a programmer. I apologize. It's one of the things with procedurals, you never know what you're going to get. Yeah, it's stacking them nicely. Anyways, what would happen is this. Because I was using the same barrel that allowed barrels to the right, even though it was in the air, it would just like, oh, I'm going to put one to the right. And then obviously it looked really dumb. So that is why I had to go and define on the barrel. I had to say, hey, when you're putting something to the right, when you're putting something up, you cannot put the same thing as yourself, because that's going to put things. So that's how I had to create a second asset, or prefab really. I had to create a second prefab, which is the barrel stacking up. And so if I look at barrel stacking up, they only go up. They don't go to the right. They just stack vertically. So once you have a base one on the floor, then something can go to the right. As soon as you go up one level, they can never go to the right. They can only go up. I had wished to show you that funny error, but I am incapable of doing that. Oh well. So yeah, so that is how we do the rooms. It took me, I guess, 40 minutes or so in order to kind of walk you through that. And so we have 27 room types, and it goes a lot slower than what I've demonstrated right here, right now, in order to do each one of those room types. So that's one of the reasons why it is taking us so long to make these 3D dungeons. But the tech is at the point where we are able to generate the room. Oh, look at that. They're going all the way to the ceiling. What a nice storage room. Yeah, so that is yeah, that's how we're doing things for making these rooms in Archmage Rises. So hope you've enjoyed that, and thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. And hopefully next time we have a build to push out. I hope. Things have been going pretty well with the build. We have had 2 setbacks. Emily, her hand has tendonitis, and so she has to take a break for like a month, sadly. And also Michael's grandmother just passed away, and so he's just traveling right now, actually, in order to go and be with family and go through that. So we've had some hiccups, but overall we seem to be doing pretty well at hitting somewhere around the 3rd week of March in order to get a build out. So we're all working towards that. Sometimes life happens, but it seems realistic right now. So thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.